So recently, you have done some absolutely incredible things. First of all, you have accomplished something which I've been fascinated by, which is photographing every freshwater fish in the UK. And how many species is that? Is that
Well, it depends who you ask. So I
yeah?
would say 53. Some would argue 54. I mean, it's funny because obviously, I guess it's a bit like a bird watching list. How can you be sure how many birds there are? But with the fish, yeah, there's 53 species. The one that kind of causes contention is the burbot, which is a freshwater cod, and there's not been a confirmed sighting since 1969. I think that was in Cambridgeshire. So they're extinct. They're not around. But there's always someone going to be like, oh, how do you know? So to kind of quash that, there's a stuffed one in my local museum. So I photographed that, and I said, well, I've technically photographed one. It's not moving and it's not alive, but that's as close as I'm going to get. So that's kind of what
Do
I
you
did
think
to.
it could be still around?
I mean, never say never. I doubt it, just because. I mean, the classic signs of pollution, habitat loss. They need quite cold water to breed, and obviously with warming climates, that's not been ideal. But I'd like to think I'd love to be proven wrong. Is the way that I'd look at this. So I'd
So
love someone
what
to
sort of
say.
habitat? Where would you have found one traditionally?
So, well, weirdly, kind of my local Nottinghamshire would have had them in the River Trent. They would have been there, but they were an Eastern England species. So I think they were present in the Thames, the Fenlands, Norfolk, East Anglia, South Yorkshire, and the East Midlands was the kind of the place you'd find them. Um, so
How
they
big
could
do
be.
they get?
They get. I mean, some of them get to about 8 or 9 pounds, so they can get pretty chunky. I mean, there are plans to reintroduce them. We talk about the lynx, and we talk about. I mean, bison was
Yeah.
another one recently down in Kent. But there are plans to reintroduce burbot to Norfolk, I think. So I'm kind of fully behind that. It's lovely to have wolves, but let's get some burbot back.
So of those 54 species, how many of those are actually native, or are they all native?
Oh, that's a good question. No, they're not. No. So the way that I compiled the list was that it was any freshwater fish that you're likely to find in British waters. So that included marine fish that enter freshwater and can stay there, things like flounder and mullet. It included the non-native ones. So I think there are 14 non-natives. So if I
What
do
are
a quick,
they? Which notable ones are there? Can you name some of them?
for example, zander, which are like a kind
Yeah.
of a large toothy perch. You've got catfish, Wells catfish, which are, they get, some of them get to 200 pounds and can eat birds. So we don't really want those here. I mean, goldfish, common goldfish, they're not a native species. So rainbow trout, there's quite a few there. I mean, there aren't any that are really widespread and causing huge issues, but it's something to be aware of, like any other non-native species. So I guess in terms of native, there's around about 30, mid-30s. I can't remember the exact number.
I think I found 38.
Oh, okay, so I wasn't far
I
off.
don't know if that's accurate or not.
That
Yeah.
sounds about right.
And which is the rarest of all these fish?
Well, I mean, you could argue the burbot, because I think it's extinct, I'm not going to include that one. So I would
Yeah.
actually say the Vendace is the rarest
Right.
one, and there's a couple of populations in Scotland. There's a couple of populations in the Lake District, and they're kind of like a trouty herring looking fish, and they're not that remarkable to look at. I shouldn't say that, because all fish are remarkable, but they're just kind of like a silvery little thing. But you find them in a couple of places. I think Loch Skene is one of the places you find them, and there's a reservoir they were introduced in Scotland as well. But again, that's another one because of global warming or climate change. It's just getting too warm for them, and they're struggling to breed. And again, pollution and whatnot. And realistically, I wouldn't be surprised if in the next 15, 20 years we lose them, just because there seems to be a downward trending spiral of them. So it's a shame, really, because if you talk to most naturalists and you say, have you heard about a Vendace? They probably look at you kind of blurry eyed and not have a clue what it is.